Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. I used to have a t-shirt that was a quote from Aung San Suu Kyi, who became the president of Burma until not long, I think it was 2021. And she was really one of the people credited for taking, I think it's Myanmar, from a dictatorship to a democracy. And I don't know a lot about the politics out of it, but there was something about the quote that I loved. And the quote was, "Fear is a habit. I am not afraid." And the quote spoke to me, even though, in all honesty, it didn't really help. Like, I was no less of a scaredy cat for wearing a t-shirt that said, "Fear is a habit, I am not afraid," than I was before. But it always stayed with me. And really in the last, I'd say 2 years, I've made a sort of a bit more of a study of fear. I got really curious about, well, what is fear? How does it work? And I decided to have a year without fear and to just see what it would be like if I would survive a year without ever using fear deliberately, without ever trying to convince myself that it was a good thing to be afraid. Because when I talk to clients about fear, a lot of them say, no, it's important. Fear keeps me safe. Now, the grain of truth in that sentence, in that idea that fear keeps you safe, is built into our biology, is awareness of danger. And that awareness of danger, of real and present danger, does indeed keep us safe. But 99.9% of what we call fear is really worry. It's really scaring ourselves with imaginary futures that go badly. And it has nothing to do real and present danger. So it doesn't in any way, shape, or form keep us safe. So when I talk about fear is a habit, I am not afraid. When I talk about living fearlessly, when I talk about a year without fear, I'm talking about taking time, and I'm going to suggest you try this week, but taking a week without scaring yourself and see what happens. Now, the very thought of taking a week without scaring yourself might terrify you because in your mind, you're imagining, oh my God, but what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if I don't get scared and then a monster eats me? Or I don't pay a bill, or whatever it is that you habitually use to scare yourself. And again, we do scare ourselves with the best of we scare ourselves straight. There was a prison program when I was growing up in the 80s that was called Scared Straight, where they take these, young juvenile offenders into big boy prison, and they try to terrify them about how bad big boy prison was so that they'd turn their lives around. And it had limited effectiveness. With some kids it worked, with other kids it didn't. But we use scaring ourselves straight, scaring ourselves safe, as a habitual strategy to try and keep ourselves safe. And as best I can tell, it originates very early in childhood. It originates the first time that your mom or brother or sister or somebody saw you about to do something that they thought was dangerous and go, "Stop!" And you got so scared because one of the two fears that we're apparently born with are falling and loud noises. And so when somebody screams when you're little, it triggers that awareness of danger. It triggers that biological response. And we start to associate that with the behavior. And when a child does not yet have the ability to think, when they do not yet have the ability to foresee consequences, that probably is a decent mechanism for survival. But from the age of 3, 5 at the latest, we already our brains have developed to the point where we can see cause-effect. We can see consequence. And so while there's always going to be more for us to learn, we no longer need that habit of linking awareness of danger, the feeling of fear, to a particular behavior to stay safe. But by then, for most of us, it's a habit. And if you really see that all fear is a habit, and it's a habit like most habits that when you were 3 or 4 or 2 or 1 was really helpful, but stopped being helpful about by the age of 5, 6, 7, then you realize that you don't have to be afraid to be safe. And it's perfectly normal if from time to time you are. So for myself, when I started to see this, when I played with my year without fear, all I did was notice myself scaring myself. And when I noticed it, as best I could, I stopped. Now, a lot of times, especially at first, I didn't notice till I was already scared. I didn't see myself do it. I just felt the fear. But as I continued to pay attention, I started to notice it earlier and earlier and earlier. And my experience now is, generally speaking, I spot it as soon as I start to create this scary imaginary future. I can feel it in my body. And because it no longer looks helpful to me, it's actually pretty straightforward to stop. In the same way as you probably don't find it difficult to not deliberately poke yourself in the eye. When you start to see that creating the feeling of fear is as unhelpful and useless a habit as poking yourself in the eye, it's quite easy to let go. Now, here's another thing that helped me. I started to see that the feeling of fear is on my side. My mentor, Mavis Karn, talks about fear as being love in disguise. It's the kindness of the system letting me know, hey, you are about to use your imagination to create this uncomfortable feeling. And you don't need to do that. And the clearer it gets that, A, you're the one scaring yourself. It doesn't just happen. Awareness of danger just happens. But you have to think yourself scared. You have to imagine a scary future in some ways in order to feel fear. When you see that that feeling of fear is not necessary and in fact often counterproductive to keeping yourself safe because it keeps you in your imagination, whereas the safest place you can ever be is right here, right now, where all your resources are, where you can actually respond to what's going on. And when you really get that fear's not a problem, it's really helpful that we have something built into us like a little lane alert system that goes beep, 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 as soon as we start misusing the gift of thought, then you'll see for yourself that fear is just a habit and you don't have to be afraid. Now, if you want to learn more about this, we've got a program called Living Fearlessly. And if you go to michaelneill.org and click on the self-study programs, you can check the program out. But all you need to do for now to begin to get a feel for this for yourself is just see if you can catch yourself scaring yourself. And each time you do, stop. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.